The sand was cold beneath his fingers as his body trembled against the metal wreckage of the ship. Thick smoke coiled through the air like ghosts of the past, carrying a scent he hadn't smelled in centuries. The sky above was torn open with fire, and the horizon was stained in ash and burning light. Captain Elias Thorne coughed, dragging his body forward with raw hands. His suit, once top-of-the-line Terran armor, was now cracked, faded, and full of static feedback. The interface on his wrist flickered weakly, showing a star date that made his blood chill. He had gone into cryosleep 300 years ago. The war he had been trained to fight should have been long over. But the battlefield around him told a different story. He rose to one knee and squinted at the chaos. Giant alien walkers stomped across the dunes in the distance, their long limbs glowing with energy. Human and alien craft weaved through the sky, firing blasts that lit up the clouds. None of this made sense. The war should have ended. Peace should have come. But everything looked worse than he remembered. A flash to his left made him duck. A fighter roared overhead and exploded midair, scattering metal and fire. The impact knocked him back, ringing his ears. He pulled himself up again and limped forward. His mission had changed. He needed to know what year it was, what planet he was on, and why humanity was still fighting this war. He found a corpse near a broken escape pod. It was human, young, with a uniform that looked unfamiliar. Elias knelt beside him, eyes scanning the badge. It had a symbol he didn't recognize and a name he didn't know. The soldier's weapon was still clutched in his hands. With a silent nod, Elias took it. The gun's interface activated with a hiss. A voice spoke from it, sharp, robotic, and alarmed. Unauthorized user. Identity unrecognized. Biosignature mismatch. Elias tapped aside and overrode the warning. His old code still worked. He was outdated, but not forgotten, and that frightened him more than anything. He moved toward the nearest ridge, ducking under broken beams and jumping over scattered alien bodies. His memories sparked with names, battles, and faces he had buried deep. The past felt close again, like the war had paused and only now resumed. He clenched his jaw. This wasn't over. It had only just begun. As he reached the top of the hill, the view widened. In the distance, massive star cruisers hovered above a ruined city. Plasma fire streaked between towers, and sirens howled across the valley. He stared at the scene for a long moment, heart pounding with disbelief. Humanity had not won, and something told him they were losing. Elias scanned the ruined skyline again. Fires burned where buildings once stood proud. Alien structures had pierced the earth like claws reaching for the sky. Everything looked different, yet the pain of war remained the same. His boots crunched over glass and bone. The land was dead, scorched by energy weapons and endless battles. A gust of wind blew ash into his face. He wiped it away and pressed forward. He needed answers, and he wouldn't find them standing still. The air was filled with distant growls and mechanical roars. Drones zipped through the clouds, scanning for survivors or enemies. He didn't know if he would be labeled as either. His presence here was a mistake, a ghost waking up in someone else's war. A low hum vibrated through the ground. He turned toward the sound and saw a transport skimmer glide silently across the dirt. It looked human in design, but sleeker than anything he remembered. The craft stopped nearby, and a hatch opened slowly. From it stepped a woman in black armor, her eyes hidden behind a glowing visor. Her armor bore the same strange symbol as the dead soldiers. She aimed her weapon at him without hesitation. Elias raised his hands and froze in place. She spoke, her voice sharp and commanding. "Identify yourself. You're wearing obsolete gear. How did you get here?" He swallowed and answered with his name and rank. Her visor flickered as if scanning him. Then, slowly, she lowered her weapon. "You're not lying," she said quietly. "Captain Elias Thorne, presumed dead in 3794. You're real." Her tone held a mixture of awe and confusion. Elias took a cautious step forward. He still didn't know if she was friend or foe. She introduced herself as Commander Rail, part of Earth's last defense line. She told him the war had never ended. It had only changed names, enemies, and tactics. But the blood was the same, and so was the dying. Elias listened, heart sinking with each word. After the old Terran fleets were crippled, smaller factions formed from the wreckage. Earth was no longer one voice. It was dozens of broken alliances, all fighting for survival. He had returned to a galaxy that forgot what unity meant. Rael offered to take him to a forward outpost. He agreed, climbing into the skimmer beside her. The craft rose into the air and sped across the battlefield. From the sky, Elias saw how deep the scars of war had gone. Cities were ruins. Forests were ash. Oceans boiled under alien bombs. They landed at a hidden bunker carved into a canyon wall. Soldiers inside stared at Elias with wide eyes. He wasn't just a man to them. He was history in the flesh. Some reached out to touch his armor as if it would vanish. But he didn't vanish. He was real, and he was angry. Rael brought him to a command center. Screens showed battles on multiple worlds. AI voices filled the air with casualty reports and warning alerts. The galaxy was unraveling. Elias studied the maps and knew one thing. He had woken up for a reason. Before they could speak more, alarms screamed through the base. Enemy forces had found their location. Rael shouted commands while soldiers rushed to defensive stations. Elias grabbed a rifle from the wall. It felt strange in his hand, lighter and deadlier than he remembered. But his instincts remained. He followed Rael into the trenches. Explosions lit up the canyon. Alien mechs descended with deadly grace. Bullets and beams cut through smoke. Elias took aim and fired. The recoil jolted his shoulder, but the shot hit true. One mech fell, sparking and twitching in the dirt. Rael glanced at him, surprised. "You still got it." He didn't respond. He didn't need to. The war may have changed, but soldiers like him didn't. Smoke rolled to the trenches as the alien mechs advanced. Their limbs moved like machines possessed, silent and fast. Red lights blinked across their faces, scanning for targets in the dust and debris. Elias presses back against a metal wall, his breath steady despite the chaos. The rifle in his hand was unfamiliar, but his grip was firm. Old instincts returned like muscle memory. He peeked out and fired another shot. The bolt pierced a mech sensor, dropping it instantly. Rael barked orders down the line. Her troops followed without hesitation, moving with trained precision. They were outnumbered but not outmatched. Elias noticed how they trusted her completely. She wasn't just their commander. She was their backbone. A sudden burst of enemy fire forced him to duck. Sparks showered over his head. A soldier beside him screamed and fell, clutching his side. Elias dragged a man to cover and applied pressure to the wound. The young soldier looked at him with wide, confused eyes. "You're him," the soldier gasped. Elias gave a short nod. He didn't know what that meant anymore. A name from history couldn't stop bullets. But he would do everything to make sure this soldier survived. He tightened the bandage and returned to the front line. The aliens pushed harder. Drones swarmed overhead like metal insects. The trench walls shook as mechs landed nearby. Rael tossed Elias a grenade. "Use it. We need to breach that line." He nodded and pulled the pin. The explosion lit the sky and scattered the enemy formation. Bodies fell. Fire spread. The smell of scorched metal and flesh mixed in the air. Elias moved forward, heart pounding. Each step was a reminder that he wasn't done. This war had taken centuries from him. Now it demanded more. They drove the mechs back yard by yard. The battle lasted for what felt like hours. When it ended, the ground was littered with wreckage and smoke. Elias leaned against a wall, covered in dirt and sweat. Rael approached and handed him a water pack. "You fight like you never stopped," she said. He drank slowly, then wiped his mouth. "Because I didn't," he replied. Her eyes softened for a moment. She understood. Even 3 centuries of sleep hadn't dulled the fire in his veins. He looked across the broken battlefield. It reminded him of 1,000 others. Different year. Same blood. Inside the bunker, the survivors regrouped. Medics worked without pause. Screens blinked red. A message had arrived. Rael tapped it open. A distant colony was under siege. Civilian shelters were being targeted. She turned to Elias, jaw tight. "We can't hold here. They need help. But if we go, we leave this post exposed." Elias studied the map. The colony was vulnerable, but it wasn't just strategy that moved him. It was a memory of places like that, where people prayed soldiers would come. He remembered faces that never saw a rescue. He looked at Rail. "We go." They gathered who could move and left the wounded behind with supplies. The journey across the ravaged terrain took hours. The sky darkened as storms rolled in. Thunder crackled like distant artillery. Rail piloted the skimmer through the ash clouds while Elias watched the land pass below. When they reached the colony, fire greeted them. Buildings were torn open. Civilians huddled in broken shelters. Alien forces patrolled the outer perimeter. The skimmer touched down behind a collapsed tower. Elias stepped out and raised his weapon. Rail nodded to him. No orders were needed, only action. They struck fast. Elias moved like a shadow between flames. Rail covered him with expert aim. Civilians screamed and scattered. Enemy forces turned too late. One by one, they fell. But as Elias reloaded behind cover, he heard a new sound, something deep and unnatural vibrating through the ground. He looked at Rail and saw the worry on her face. "What is that?" he asked. She didn't answer, but her silence was enough. The sound grew louder with every second. It pulsed like a heartbeat made of metal, shaking the broken walls around them. Dust fell from the ceilings. The civilians huddled deeper into the shadows. Elias gripped his weapon tighter as the ground trembled beneath his feet. A shape emerged through the smoke. It was massive, towering over burning buildings. Its legs moved like pistons, slamming into the earth with each step. Covered in black armor and glowing blue lines, the war machine looked like something born to erase entire cities. Rail pulled Elias behind a wrecked transport. "That's a siege-class destroyer," she said quickly. "We've never faced one this close before. They're sent to end resistance where diplomacy fails. We're not equipped for this." Elias peered over the cover. The machine's head turned slowly, scanning for targets. Smaller drones circled it like hungry birds. It wasn't just here to kill. It was here to make an example. "Then we hit it where it hurts," he said. Rail looked at him, eyes sharp. "You have a plan?" He nodded. His voice was calm. "We distract it, get its attention. Then we draw it into the narrow valley west of here. The walls will limit its movement. I'll plant charges and bring it down." She hesitated only a second. Then she tapped her comm and relayed orders. Her team responded quickly, splitting up and spreading through the ruins. Elias ran with them, heart steady. The machine moved toward the shelters. Time was running out. He opened fire on its flank. The shot sparked against its armor, but did no damage. It worked. The machine turned its massive head toward him. Red lights locked onto his position. It unleashed a barrage of plasma that shattered the walls around him. Elias dove and rolled, dodging fire. He dashed between cover, leading the behemoth west. Drones followed close behind, but Rail's team picked them off with precision. Step by step, the trap was working. The valley entrance came into view. Rail called out over the comm, "Charges ready. Keep going. You're almost there." Elias glanced over his shoulder. The machine was still following. Its weapons cut deep scars into ground. He pushed harder, lungs burning. He had one shot at this. He reached the valley's throat and dove behind a rock. The machine entered the pass, its frame scraping against the cliff walls. Rail gave the signal. The charges exploded with a roar, collapsing rock down onto the machine's back. It staggered but didn't fall. "Again!" Elias shouted. The remaining charges went off. Flames burst from under its armor. The machine groaned as metal bent and twisted. With a final shot from Rail's launcher, the core cracked open. A shockwave surged out, throwing Elias backward. He hit the dirt hard, ears ringing. When he opened his eyes, the machine was down. Fires danced across its shattered body. Rail ran to him, kneeling beside him. "You good?" she asked. He sat up slowly and gave a small nod. They helped the civilians evacuate. The children stared at Elias like he was a legend. To them, he probably was. He didn't speak much. He just kept moving, checking for wounded, scanning the skies. He didn't trust the quiet. Later that night, by a small fire near the edge of the ruined colony, Rael sat beside him. "You saved them," she said. "That counts for something." Elias didn't look at her. His voice was low. "Not enough. Not until it ends." She didn't answer right away. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small black case. "We recovered this from an enemy officer. It's encrypted, but it has coordinates. Deep space. Unclaimed sector. You think it's worth checking?" Elias looked at the stars. "Yes," he said simply. Then he stood. The transport ship cut through the dark silence of space. Stars stretched across the black canvas outside the viewport. Elias stood near the control panel, staring at the encrypted case Rael handed him. It hadn't spoken yet, but it felt heavy with secrets. Rael sat in the co-pilot seat, eyes focused ahead. The route to the unclaimed sector was long and uncharted. It was an old part of the galaxy, forgotten during the wars. Rumors said it was cursed. Others said it held relics of the first fleets. Neither of them believed in ghosts, but both knew that secrets had weight. As they approached the edge of mapped territory, the ship's systems flickered. Static crackled over the comms. Rael adjusted the settings, but the interference didn't stop. A deep pulse echoed through the hull. Elias touched the side of the encrypted case. It was glowing faintly now. "Whatever it's connected to," Rael said. "We're getting close." Elias nodded. He didn't know what they'd find, but his instincts warned him it wouldn't be simple. Nothing in this war ever was. Peace was a word people whispered, but never touched. The ship dropped out of hyperspace into a field of wreckage. Thousands of ships floated in silence. Some were ancient. Others looked recently destroyed. Burned flags and shattered hulls drifted like broken bones. Elias stepped closer to the glass. "A graveyard," he whispered. Rael slowed the ship and activated the scanners. "There's power signatures. A structure near the center. Large, intact, but hidden under debris." The encrypted case pulsed again. Whatever was out there, it wanted to be found. Elias checked his weapon and gave a sharp nod. They flew carefully toward the center. The silence outside felt heavier the deeper they went. Shapes moved between shadows, but no heat signatures registered. It felt like something was watching them, waiting. Rael brought the ship to a halt near a colossal black station buried beneath twisted steel. A docking signal activated on its own. A slow, grinding door opened, revealing a landing bay. "That's an invitation," Rael muttered. "Or a trap." Elias smiled faintly. "Probably both." They docked and stepped onto the station, weapons ready. The air inside was dry, metallic, and oddly warm. Lights flickered on as they moved forward. Symbols lined the walls, none of which their systems could translate. The station felt older than anything Elias had seen. Older than the war. Older than Earth's first launch into space. It was built by something before them, maybe not even human. At the heart of the station, they found a chamber pulsing with energy. A console rose from the floor, shaped like a spiral. The encrypted case opened in Elias's hand and released a thin beam of light that connected with the console. The entire station hummed to life. A holographic projection appeared. It showed a map of the galaxy, but not as it was now. It was a map from before the fractures, before the war, a time when humanity ruled from a single command. At the center of it was a blinking symbol. Home Fleet Command. Rael read aloud. Elias stepped forward. "That fleet vanished centuries ago," he said. "They were said to hold the key to unifying the factions. If it still exists," Rael interrupted, "then maybe we don't have to keep fighting alone." The chamber brightened as coordinates were revealed. They downloaded the data. As they turned to leave, the station systems dimmed once more. The silence returned. But Elias didn't feel watched anymore. He felt chosen, as if something ancient had passed a message through time, and it had reached the right hands. Rael looked at him. "You think this could actually end the war?" Elias stared into the stars and answered without hesitation. "Yes." The journey to the coordinates took them to the outer edge of human space. Nothing marked the path on their star maps. There were no patrols, no satellites, no warnings. Just black space and ancient silence. Rael monitored the scans while Elias sat beside her, reviewing the old galactic map. The blinking signal from the hidden station pulsed steadily. They didn't know what to expect. A fleet, a grave, or nothing at all. But they followed it because something deep in them both believed it mattered. As they approached the location, the scanners picked up a field of energy. It was faint but vast, like a bubble hanging in the dark. Elias leaned forward. "That's not natural," he said. Rail nodded and eased the ship forward. The energy shimmered as they passed through it. The darkness vanished in an instant. Before them stretched an entire system, planets, moons, and in the center, a fleet larger than anything Elias had ever seen. Thousands of ships floated in perfect formation, untouched by war or time. The home fleet still existed. Gas escaped from Rail's crew. Every ship bore the insignia of the old Terran command. Their hulls gleamed silver and gold, their engines silent but ready. They hadn't aged. They had waited. A message blinked on the console. Elias tapped it without hesitation. A voice filled the cabin. Calm. Familiar. Captain Elias Thorne. You have returned. Verification complete. Home fleet status dormant. Awaiting reactivation protocol. Do you wish to proceed? Elias felt his throat tighten. He looked at Rail, who gave a slight nod. Yes, he said clearly. The ship trembled as the fleet responded. Lights flashed on every vessel. Reactors hummed to life. Command bridges lit up. The entire fleet began to awaken. A force untouched for centuries was breathing again. The console displayed new options. Ship control, strategic links, communications. Elias accessed the broadcast channel. To all surviving human colonies and military forces, he began. This is Captain Elias Thorne. The home fleet is alive. We are returning to restore order and end this war. Rail watched the transmission spread through jump relays and satellites. Across countless systems, broken forces would hear his voice. Some would rally, some would resist, but the galaxy would change. Elias sat back and exhaled slowly. We need to move fast. The enemy won't stay quiet for long. They guided the fleet out of hiding. The energy field collapsed behind them. As they entered known space again, alarms triggered on enemy outposts. Several hostile factions detected their presence. Rail traced their signals. They're preparing to intercept. Dozens of ships heading our way. Elias stood at the fleet command console. Then let them come, he said. This time we're not fighting alone. Orders were transmitted across the armada. Pilots climbed into fighters. Captains took their places. Battle formations shifted into position. It was a dance from another age, rehearsed in silence for centuries. The stars lit up with motion. Enemy fleets emerged with fury, but the home fleet moved like a living wall. Their weapons were old, but powerful. Their defenses layered and precise. When the two sides clashed, the void erupted in fire and light. Elias stood firm on the bridge of the lead cruiser. His voice was calm as he gave commands. Rail relayed tactics and watched enemy movements. They were outnumbered but not outmatched. Each blast from the home fleet tore through enemy ranks with unstoppable force. Within minutes, enemy formations broke. Some fled, some surrendered. The rest were erased by the full fury of a fleet forgotten by history. Elias lowered his weapon and turned to Rail. It started. The tide is turning. Rail nodded, eyes on the screen. And this is only the beginning. The home fleet moved through space like a rising storm. Its size alone caused panic among scattered enemy factions. Some systems surrendered before a single shot was fired. Others tried to resist and were quickly overrun. Elias sat at the command deck, eyes scanning each sector lighting up red on the holomap. Every enemy movement was tracked. Every retaliation answered. The sleeping giant of Earth had returned. But Elias knew strength alone wouldn't win peace. Rail entered the bridge with a report. We've received messages from 2 major colonies. One wants to join. The other is cautious. They don't trust Central Command after what happened years ago. Elias nodded slowly. Then we remind them why Terran Command stood for unity, not control. He ordered relief ships to be dispatched. Medical supplies, food, security reinforcements. Where war had burned homes, the home fleet planted protection. Where fear had ruled, they brought order. It wasn't just about winning battles. It was about giving people something to believe in again. News spread across systems faster than light. Elias's name returned to the stars. Soldiers called him the lost captain. Civilians whispered about the fleet that came from nowhere. Rumors said it was vengeance. But those who saw it knew better. It was hope. Rael stood beside Elias as they reviewed incoming threats. "There's one name that keeps surfacing," she said. "The Crimson Regime. They control the outer sectors. Ruthless. Unified. They don't run from battle. And they don't negotiate." Elias studied the data. "We strike them before they strike us," he said. "If they see our fleet as a threat, they'll come with everything. Let's meet them on ground we choose." Coordinates were selected. A neutral world. Cold. Rocky. Ideal for large fleet combat. A challenge worthy of the home fleet. Preparations began immediately. Warships refueled. Fighters were calibrated. AI systems analyzed terrain and weather patterns. Soldiers trained in silence. No music. No shouting. Just the steady hum of readiness. They all knew this battle would decide more than territory. It would define the future. On the eve of battle, Elias walked the lower decks. Crew members nodded as he passed. Some reached out to touch his shoulder, not as a symbol, as a leader who bled like them, who stood among them, not above them. He stopped at the window and stared out into the stars. Rael joined him, holding 2 cups of synthetic tea. She handed him one. "Nervous?" she asked with a slight smile. He sipped and shook his head. "Not nervous. Focused." She leaned on the rail beside him. "You know, some think this is destiny. That you were meant to return now, not before." He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Maybe the galaxy needed time to forget before it could remember who we were." She looked at him carefully. "And who are we?" He turned toward her, eyes steady. "We are the last line between chaos and peace." As the fleet entered orbit over the neutral world, enemy vessels dropped from hyperspace. Red and black cruisers. Fighters shaped like daggers. Massive flagships armed with planet-breaker cannons. The Crimson Regime had arrived with fury and numbers. But the home fleet didn't retreat. It shifted into tight formation. Old tactics returned like breath. Captain spoke in short, clear orders. No hesitation. No panic. Every ship moved with purpose. This was what they were built for. This was why they had waited. Elias took his place on the bridge of the command ship. Lights dimmed. The silence before war was always the loudest. His crew waited for his command. He looked at the screen. The enemy fleet grew larger with every second. Rael turned to him and gave a small nod. "Let's begin," he said. The first shot came from the enemy flagship. A beam of red light split the sky, striking a shielded cruiser in the home fleet. The impact shook the formation, but the ship held firm. Elias stood without flinching as alarms echoed through the bridge. "Shield stable," Rael reported. "No breach." Elias gave the signal to respond. From every ship in the home fleet, a wave of energy burst forward. Blue and white bolts lit the darkness. Space became a battlefield of light and thunder. Fighters from both sides swarmed like hornets. Explosions dotted the black sky. Debris spun wildly through the chaos. Each vessel danced and struck with deadly grace. The home fleet moved with perfect coordination. The Crimson Regime fought like fire, reckless but fierce. Elias watched it all unfold. He spoke calmly into the fleet channel, guiding captains, shifting tactics, responding in real time. His voice steadied those who feared. His orders saved lives. The command deck moved like an extension of his will. Rael spotted a pattern in the enemy's movements. They're protecting something. A core ship at the rear. If we take it out, their coordination will fall apart. Elias nodded. "Send the ghosts." The stealth wing broke from formation, vanishing into the shadows of war. As battles raged across orbit, the ghosts moved unseen. They weaved through wreckage and enemy fire, slipping past defenses. One by one, they planted charges along the core ship's hull. When the last signal came, Elias gave the word. "Detonate." The explosion tore the core ship in half. A chain reaction rippled through the enemy's communication lines. Their ships faltered. Formation broke. Confusion spread. The home fleet pressed the advantage. Every blast now hit harder. Every second pushed the enemy back. The Crimson regime launched one final desperate push. Their remaining ships surged forward, but it was too late. The home fleet encircled them. Within minutes, the last flagship fell. Silence returned to the stars, broken only by the static of retreating signals. Cheers erupted across the fleet. On the bridge, Elias didn't smile. He watched the screen, scanning for threats. When none came, he finally let his shoulders relax. Rael exhaled beside him. "It's done," she said quietly. Elias nodded. For now. He looked at the stars beyond. The war wasn't completely over, but this battle had changed everything. The home fleet's return was no longer a secret. It was a fact the galaxy would remember. They sent messages to allied systems, offering protection and peace. Some responded with gratitude, others with doubt. But one by one, more voices joined the call. Planets united under a single banner for the first time in generations. Rael stood beside Elias as he addressed the galaxy. His message was brief. "I was born in war, lost in time, and awakened into chaos. But I will not allow humanity to be broken. We are stronger together, and we are taking back our future." The fleet began to rebuild. Shipyards opened. New cadets trained alongside veterans. Old technology was reborn. Science and strategy met again. Across stars, people spoke of Elias Thorne not as a ghost of the past, but as the man who made the future possible. One evening, far from command decks and war rooms, Elias walked alone under the dome of a rebuilt colony. The sky was clear. Children played nearby. A family lit a fire. No sirens, no screams, just laughter in the night air. Rael approached him slowly, standing at his side. Neither of them spoke at first. Then she asked, "Do you think it will last?" Elias watched the stars above. He thought of the wreckage, the fire, and the endless silence he once woke into. "It has to,"